12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast, episode 55. Today I have another guest that's north of the United States and Canada. Angela, I've been following her roughly, I would say about maybe 3 months, if not a little bit longer. Usually what I do when I follow a lot of people in the sober community, I'll just look on their page, see what they post before I actually reach out to them and ask them to be a guest on my podcast. And Angela didn't stop short of positive information, positive posts, quotes, and everything. So I definitely had to have her on the show. I know that we've had conflicting schedules over the last month or so, but I am definitely appreciative for us both to have the time today to be able to do it here on a Friday. And before we get into the interview, you can, if you want to shop the merch, you can go on 12facessober.com. You can order a signed copy of 12 Faces of Sober that just hit bestseller back in February 22nd of 2022, as well as you can get a variety of 12 Faces of Sober merch. I just added multiple colors of slides. It's the summertime. I know a lot of people, especially the younger generation today, they love to have on slides. It don't matter if you drink or you don't drink, but like I said, would greatly appreciate the support. I have shirts on there. I took off the hoodies for right now because a lot of places around, especially here in the United States, it's hot as can be. And so we'll put them back on there later on in probably around the fall. I have the hoodies and the jackets back on there, but I have tights, other stuff. So like I said, just check it out. Also have pictures to kind of chronicle my sober journey, with my family and things like that. I talk about my family a lot because they have been very, very supportive of my sober journey. And let's see, update as far as my next book. I actually have a buddy of mine in San Diego. He will be taking the pictures tomorrow. So once he takes those pictures, I will be submitting those to the publisher and hopefully be able to get that out by my birthday in August. So be on the lookout for that. And I will have the Army book probably complete by August, but I'm not going to release it until Veterans Day, which is in, I think, mid-October. And then lastly, I've been kind of toying around on whether or not I want to do a book about radio. And the reason being is because that was an interesting period in my life in my early 20s, but I do feel like it needs to be discussed. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my guest that's from Canada. Her name is Angela. So welcome to 12 Faces Sober Speaks podcast.
Hey, nice to finally talk with you, Kenneth.
I appreciate you joining the show. Now, Angela, so first, how long have you been sober? I noticed that that was something that definitely drew my attention to your page.
Yes, so June 6, 2022, I have been sober for 2 years. 2 years after 30 plus years of drinking and substance abuse.
Okay, so you're right around the corner then.
Yeah.
Okay. Early congratulations. Let me make sure I write that on there so that I can put that in the
Oh well, no, June 6th. June 6th already passed. Past June 6th.
Oh, June 6th. Okay, well, congratulations. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No worries.
Okay. Now, so you had your struggles with alcoholism, just like a lot.
Oh yes.
So when was it that you began to drink?
I had my first drink when I was 12 years old. And kept it consistent since then.
Now, was growing up, was alcohol around you? Was that something that you saw in the household, or was that something that, as youngsters, we like to experiment?
Crazy enough, Kenneth, no, it wasn't present in the house. I am the definition of a minister's daughter. So the only thing in the house was church wine, which I got my hands on. So I guess from the outside looking in, my family structure looked very normal. I guess I was also perceived as like a spoiled kid, but it wasn't like that. My family was very dysfunctional. There was some childhood trauma that led to me choosing to drink and choose drugs. The first drug I ever did was acid. I was 13. So I started with the hard stuff first. And funny enough, I'm 45, almost 45 in October, and I think I've smoked weed a handful of times. I don't like it. It just doesn't agree with me. So I went in with all the hard stuff first. Yeah, so no, it wasn't present in the home. No.
And then you mentioned trauma. If you don't mind sharing, if you don't mind, I think that is something that, as those who do experiment with drugs and alcohol, especially at a young age, it seems like it is, there's something that demon or something that's been hanging over our heads. And we think as an escape or an outlet, we go to drugs and alcohol.
Right. Yes. I will say now as an adult that my parents did the best they could with what they knew then. And I don't know. I love them dearly and never blame them or anything really that's to my decisions now as an adult. But then there was just a lot of neglect issues, abandonment issues, childhood trauma I'm still processing through and trying to figure out, if that makes sense. I was always a people pleaser. I always wanted to help people from a very, very young age. I guess to say I was hypersexualized, if I'm using that term correctly. And it was just a lot for a young child to internalize and interpret, right? So I was always told I was bad. I was a bad kid. I didn't listen. So I just popped into that role. If that's what I was going to be told, that's what I was going to do. I was told from a young age, yes, some mental health issues because I was acting out, right? I tried counseling once. My mom was more so very receptive to that. My dad, not so much, being of color. He just didn't agree with that. Thought it was silly. So I was taught from a young age to basically soldier up, like, this is in your head and you have to figure things out. So things that were happening and going on, I just tried to figure them out as best I could as a child. And I turned to alcohol and drugs and all of the wrong people.
Now you mentioned something, and I totally forgot about this. But when I was in junior high, in the 90s, we're not too many, we're rather close in age.
Yeah.
And my school had a very large acid drug bust.
Oh, wow.
In seventh grade.
I believe it.
And I didn't know what acid was. I still, I was like, okay, they like it literally, they locked down our lockers. Like
oh my God.
They closed the lockers my 7th grade year because of that. Like really.
Wow.
So when you
I
said
believe
that,
it.
I was like, whoa, like, so that's interesting that you share that. And then another thing too, that you mentioned too, is 12 years old. 12 was the age for me. And that's where 12 Faces Sober came from, is that 12 was the age that I first got drunk. Not the first time I took a drink. That was at least 4 or 5 years old. But 12, and I guess after that, it kind of, it just kept on going from there. So I thought that was rather interesting. And the third thing, you talked about abandonment. I was, I don't know if they call that in Canada, but like both my parents work. I was a latchkey kid. So it was like, I would come home from school, nobody was there. And so like, I would get into stuff that I knew that I shouldn't have been doing. Alcohol was right there. I almost set my house on fire a lot of different times. I was a fire buzz. I would just like spark matches and just throw them until I got caught. The couch was the back of the couch was burnt up. And
Oh my
the
God.
person that could figure who did it was me, so
Right.
and that's what to me is really, interesting when I have guests on my show, because it just seems like a lot of the stories, like, they really coincide. And it's like,
Yes.
that the age of when we start to experiment, and the age of when we start doing things that we just thinking that we're grown, and we're not even close to being grown.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So now, um, so what was it like for you, like, going into high school? Like, you
Oh,
mentioned, middle school age, okay, now you're experimenting. So you could either go left or you can go right, or
right.
you can go straight, down the straight path. Like for me, I was
Yep.
an athlete, so it was like, okay, I drank on weekends, or
Right.
smoked, smoked on the weekends. I played basketball Wednesdays and Fridays, football Friday nights, but then when it came to weekend, I partied hard. So
Right.
so what was going on for you, like, those days in high school?
Well, geez, again, because I started so young, right? So you would think I had more structure in the home. I really didn't, especially having a minister for a father. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. It almost seemed like it was better when I was out of the house, but
Mhm.
I was allowed to have friends over. I could have boys sleep over. I could sleep over wherever I wanted to.
Wow.
I was just open. They bought my cigarettes for me. Yeah, so yeah, and I almost, looking back now, I feel a lot of things were done out of guilt,
Mm.
like parenting out of guilt, which I went left, completely left. It didn't turn out well. So junior high in grade 8, I was actually kicked out of school for drinking. Yeah. So a friend of mine, I'm still friends with her 30 plus years later. She brought moonshine to school and we drank it. And then another girl we drank with, she was very drunk. We got caught. The two of us got kicked out of school, and she got a suspension. So long story short, I had to switch schools,
Mm.
and it didn't get any better from there. So high school, I don't know. I was a very intelligent kid, but school and there was just, I didn't want to be there. So I skipped school constantly, even by myself. Like I just didn't want to be there. Um, I picked up with boys very young. Um, I met a boy in junior high that carried on through high school. It wasn't abusive, but he was a Caucasian male. I'm a Black female, and he was very racist. I don't even know what I was thinking, like, to look back at it now. Yeah, just the things I tolerated and put up with. So I started learning emotional and mental abuse then. And I took it and I tolerated it, and led into further into high school. Him and I broke up, and then I met the man I actually married at a very young age. And that was extremely toxic, very, very abusive, which just fueled the drinking even more.
Mm.
It was my coping. I learned right away from a young age that my drinking was my go-to to cope with everything.
And then and I would have to, second that, because it was, kind of for me. And like I said, I was already drinking before I had got married. And
Yeah,
it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I'm married now, and the relationship wasn't the greatest. And
right,
I stayed in it. It was abusive. I was on the receiving end of the abuse.
right.
She was smaller than me, but I was taught to never
It can
put,
happen.
yeah, I was taught to never put my hands on a woman. So it was like, all
Right,
right, I dealt with it. And even when the police came, you know, it didn't matter. Well, she did get arrested. I will say that,
right.
you know, and like I said, and I've said it in other podcasts, and I'll say it again. It's not even a laughing matter, but she worked in the medical field, and
Oh,
was an LPN. And I don't know. We've been divorced now, I think, like 5 years, but I know that
okay.
at that time she couldn't get a job. She
Oh,
couldn't.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
she,
bet.
because of that. And so, and I even the last time, one of the last times too, like, called the police on her, and she assaulted me. I'm like, look, man, she just punched me in the back of my head. Like, so you telling me that y'all ain't gonna take her to jail? But if I was the one that had put my hands on her with physical damage, y'all would
Right.
have me, y'all would have me in handcuffs, no questions asked. So
Yeah.
that's definitely interesting. And it's tough, because like I said, sometimes, we don't have enough self-esteem to walk away from situations. And
Yes. Oh, I had none. I had zero. Yeah. And that, again, that started from a very young age. I just, yeah.
that's for sure. Now, so you got married at a young age. Now, was that so how was both parties drinking, or was it just you yourself who was drinking and you just dealt with whatever was going on within the marriage?
No, he wasn't a really big drinker. He smoked weed a lot. Even before we got married, like steroid use, oh my God, that fueled the abuse even more. But it was like just chronic weed smoker. I was drinking, I had my first child at 19. So I was very young. And then we got married at 20. So again, I'm trying to go back to school or upgrade. He wasn't really doing much. He was trying to start a company at the time. But I'm a kid having a kid, right? And my parents were trying their best to be as supportive as they could. But again, it's like, I made my bed, I have to lie in it kind of thing, right? And the abuse just got so bad that I had to leave. Like I just couldn't. So by the time I was 21, I had 2 kids. They're a year apart, barely. So I was exhausted, and there was just no way, a son and a daughter, and especially my daughter, but for my son too, I wasn't going to allow them to be brought up in a home where there was that kind of violence and abuse. So I left.
Okay. And so you left.
Yeah.
But when did the drinking obviously continue?
Oh yes, it got worse.
Okay.
Yeah, it got worse. So I continued drinking because now I'm left with these 2 kids who are depending on me.
Okay.
I was working legitimately at first. And there was some, I guess, I leave out certain parts. So when we met while in high school, so before kids, before marriage, I was introduced to the world of sexual exploitation. That stopped for a bit. But then after my first son, reintroduced, and then just to be in that kind of lifestyle, and that's a whole other kind of abuse just with men in general. I drank even more because just to cope with what I was doing. And he was okay with it, which in hindsight was crazy. I drank, and it was like an everyday thing. So I basically I feel it almost at that point a functioning alcoholic. Like it just was what it was, a part of the routine.
Now, I'm gonna ask because I'm curious. Sexual exploitation.
Yes.
Now that can be labels. That could be a host of things. Now, like I said, if you want to share, you can. And the reason why I asked that is because I'm gonna share something too. If you can answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started off, I was doing massage. That's the term for it. I was doing massage, and then that led to escorting. There was a moment where, yes, I worked outside. That was a very brief moment because that's a whole other level that was extremely difficult for me to wrap my head around. But that's where it started.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because in my days of radio, I came across someone, a madam, and I didn't know that this what she was trying to get me to do. And she was like, she sent me, like, when I was in Minnesota, I lived like 15, 20 minutes from Minneapolis and St. Paul. And well, I'm sorry, southeast of St. Paul.
Yeah.
And so here it is, one of the only Black people that lived in the neighborhood, me and my mom. I'm getting Gretchen limos coming to pick me up.
Wow.
and so, but of course, at that time, I had to be at least like 23. Like, no, I was about 24, 25. And I was like, wow, man, like here it is. I go outside, big old limo by myself. And I didn't find out until somebody else that was already wrapped up in it. And,
Yep.
yeah, why don't you just come hang out with me? I'll pay you. All you got to do is just smile, shake hands with people, whatever, whatever. I said,
Yep.
I'm fresh out of college, got student loans that need to be paid. And
That's how it
so,
starts. Yep.
and then come to find out, he was like, yo, man, you might not want to mess with her. She's bad news. This is
Yep.
what she does. But she was friends with someone who actually worked at the radio station. So I was like, damn, they got me like in this. But like I eventually, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do it.
Smart. Good.
But it was like very tempting because I was like, okay, you're gonna pay me $200, $300 for less than an hour,
Yeah.
just, to chill. But I knew
Yeah.
that just to chill was not just to chill; it was a little bit more
Yeah.
than that. So
Always strings attached.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And but then and come to find out, somebody that I knew kind of was in conversations with, she was in the game. And I didn't know that they knew each other until we sat down that one day, and she was like, yeah, I know this girl, her name is so and so and so and so. Oh yeah, that's one of mine. And I was like,
Oh,
one of your
wow.
what?
What? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was like, wrong deal. And then she, had a baby by a famous R&B group, and I won't say who, but up in Minnesota. And I was just like, okay, I got to get out of the game. I don't want to, but yeah.
Yes.
So it definitely interesting,
Yeah.
and thank you for sharing that. And so,
Oh, you're welcome.
now that shame on the your partner for letting you, what I'm saying, because I know that I personally couldn't do that. But yeah, I mean.
Oh, I know. And see, again, like that's something you would think as an intelligent woman, because I was, but I was so broken. I just thought I'll do anything to make you happy. Like, okay. And I felt guilty about money because I was trying to work legitimately. I had the kids in daycare at like 6 a.m. They had to be there all day trying to get back and forth. And again, they're barely a year apart. I did try to get help. I did go to like for government assistance. And I remember having both kids like on my lap. Again, they're very small. So I had just had my daughter and I had my son. And I went this route because I remember my partner trying to get me now to do webcam stuff, even while I was pregnant. And I was like, oh my God. And I was so scared to say no, right? So, but I just didn't want to do this anymore. So I go to try to get help. And this is back in the day, right? So it was an open office. There was other people waiting. I was called up. So I go to the desk. And then, so she's, I guess, reading my file. And then she laughed. And then she said, oh, adult entertainment. That's what they're calling it now. And I was mortified. Somebody behind me started laughing.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I didn't even know what to say. So I sat there. And she said, so this is what you're doing. So you're escorting, you're doing massage, and you expect the government now to turn around and give you money. And I could have just slid off the chair and sunk into a hole. And she told me verbatim, I suggest you just continue doing what you're doing because we're not going to help you. And that was such a pivotal moment. That fuels what I do today. It stems from that specific moment, because that was one of the most humiliating things I had ever experienced. And there was people like laughing at me on the way out with my two kids, and I left. And as you were sharing your experience and your story, that turned me into like a very cold person. Like, so I could have went to the extreme left and had my own company, because I thought, oh, like, fuck this. Like, I'm over this. Like, I'm done with people judging me and looking at me. This world is just about money. So again, it didn't turn out that way. I didn't go that route, which was good. But yeah, that was a horrible, horrible experience.
So now how much longer were you involved with that? Or was there like a wake-up call? Did you have run-ins with the law? like, what was it that was like, okay, that true enough is enough type of scenario where you was like, nah, I'm not for this anymore?
I wish I could say that was a turning point. It sure wasn't. A couple years later, I met the person who I got engaged to. And then same story. He knew what I was doing, and then continued that. But then it got even worse.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was, yeah. So that's where it led to me going outside, which I didn't want to do, but felt, oh my God, well, if I don't, you're going to leave. And, so that was an extremely abusive relationship. But this time I fought back.
Okay.
Completely toxic, very unhealthy, but at least I was defending myself. But again, like he was a larger man against me, right? So that line of work continued. I had my third child with him, and my baby was 8 months old when he was murdered. So he was murdered in 2003, and he died in my arms. So thank you. That made everything worse. So that is when the diagnosis for bipolar and severe depression came into play. And it took me a while to actually go to get help, just because of the other situation I went through. I was so nervous about being judged, right? But even then, getting help, right? I couldn't afford help. So I had to get the free help. And you could tell, and I'm not putting everyone in this bubble, right? Because there are workers who care about what they do. But the people I was in contact with, I could tell I was just a file on their desk. So there was really no eye contact. It was very cold. I would come back and they wouldn't remember like who I was. A couple times I was mixed up with someone else they were talking to, and it just was it wasn't a good experience. So I did try it. I was given some medications. I tried to kill myself twice. God willing, obviously I'm still here.
Thankful for that.
Yes,
Very
right.
for that.
Very blessed and very grateful for that. And this continued into my 30s. I continued doing the same thing because it was what I knew. And now I have 3 kids. So, yeah. So, and then still, having the wrong friendships, I guess, too, because when you're in that lifestyle, you're in that lifestyle. So it was, yeah, my early 30s, I just began to, I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so now, okay. Now, did at any point during that process, was your family aware of that? And what was their, what was their thoughts?
Yes.
On that.
That was a huge thing too. So I haven't had the best relationship with my mom. My dad passed away in 2001. But before he did pass away, he found out about what I was doing. And my mom knew, and I was giving her money. So she was asking me for money to babysit and, so again, I internalized that. That wasn't okay, but I just thought it was like my norm. Like it is what it is. I knew that wasn't a normal mother-daughter relationship, but that was our dynamic. So I just learned to accept it, right? But I hated her for it. Like, I'm your daughter. How could you know and just be okay with it? Do you know what I mean? But I was an adult. I had to take accountability for the life I wanted to live. I couldn't blame her, right? So they knew. My dad was just appalled. He was shocked. And that was one of the first times I think I'd ever heard him cry. Was he's like, I'll sell the house, I'll sell the car, I'll do whatever I need to do, just stop doing that. But by that point, I was just like, oh, I hate you both. I was just so angry at just life in general. So I think I was about 28 years old when I had met the person I'm still with almost 18 years later.
Okay.
And that is when, not because I met him, but that's where the cycle of me becoming this woman, that's
Okay.
when it started. Yeah.
Okay, that's what's up. Now, let me see, hold on. Now, now fast forward to right before you decided to just completely, walk away from, doing alcohol and drugs. What
Yep.
was it that got you to that point to say, you know what, enough is enough. Now it's time for me to go ahead and, live for myself. I'm not for sure how old your children were at that point, but when was that? What was that calling for you that was like,
Oh,
okay, I got to make those changes?
so my journey's been different. So there's been lifestyle changes beforehand, but when it comes specifically to alcohol and drugs, I was literally 42
Okay.
and I was forced in it. Like my higher power was like, oh no, enough is enough. So by this point, I'm 5'3", I was almost 200 pounds, completely unhealthy. I didn't even realize though, my body was shutting down. My second friend, I've got two friends from high school. She died in 2016. Her kidneys and liver shut down. We used to drink together. And it was crazy because you would think a situation like that would have made me smarten up then, but it didn't. I was drunk at her funeral, I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, but I didn't think I had a problem because I handled myself so well, right? Like I'm not a sloppy drunk. Like I don't do that. Like I handle myself well. But yeah, so it wasn't until about 42. And I was sitting with my partner, we were having drinks and it was the beginning of the pandemic. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It is what it is. I'm going to be that woman, 90 years old, cheersing you, having a drink. I don't care. And my hand to God, I got up the next day, same normal hangover routine, Advil, water, whatever. And my body from like head to toe felt like I started to swell up. So then from there, I started having these, I almost called 911 and I don't do doctors. And especially to call 911, that's not me. Like even being abused, I never even called the police. It wasn't me. So literally, long story short, it took my body shutting down to scare the shit out of me, for me to be like, whoa, I need to completely change everything I'm doing, including my mindset.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's real interesting right there. That it would take that, because I'm gonna tell you, when I was in I had I don't know if you're familiar, but I had pancreatitis back in 2016, right before I got sober, and I was in the hospital
Oh my gosh.
For 9 days, almost died.
My
and,
gosh.
And I still didn't learn.
Yeah. See.
And then it was, it took a little bit more, basically to get out of that marriage and get out of Arizona, to realize, okay, I need this. I'm still, I was, I think 37 when I left Arizona, 37, 38, and was like, okay, I need to truly make some changes within myself before I am being laid to rest. And, my family is mourning me instead of enjoying me. So I think that was really cool. Now, speaking of mindset, so you changed your mindset. So did you seek going to like rehab? Did you, like I said, some people did rehab, some people quit cold turkey, some people just walked into the doors of AA. Some people didn't do any of that and just said, okay, enough is enough. I don't want this in my body anymore.
Yes, and that was me. I just thought, I'm done. Like I refuse. I will never feel like this again. I'm done. However, nobody prepared me for the detox my body was about to go through. And I didn't know anything. I just thought I could quit because November 1st, 2015, I quit smoking cigarettes after 27 years. I just woke up. I was tired of smelling like an ashtray. It was disgusting. I was done with it. So I thought, well, I could do that. So I'll just do this. But then last year, like 2021, my body went through this full detox. Oh my God, I was like scared to eat. I didn't know what the fuck was going on with my body. Now I can see, right? And since then I've had 2 physicals, knock on wood. Even my doctor did that. I'm in perfect health. I had one doctor tell me that my kidneys and liver kept up with the drinking that I did. So yeah, I'm just so blessed and so grateful that it turned out like that, because I didn't seek rehab. I didn't seek therapy. Like none of it. I thought, okay, I have to train myself. And it was hard. Like I remember being curled up in a fetal position for weeks in bed, having to force myself to get up to cook for my youngest son, and just go about life so he sees some kind of normalcy, but feeling like, oh my God, what's going on with me? You know? So that was difficult to do, but I did it. And mindset, if you knew me, if you knew me even 5 years ago, you'd be like, whoa, because I was just this angry, bitter, unhealthy, toxic person. And for me to change my mindset, because again, if you knew me, to know me now, that took everything. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Even over childbirth, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
That's what's up. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop it right here.